Happy Sabbath, church. Hope you all had a wonderful week. In our home, this was the last week of school holidays. Amen. Harry's been on holidays since December 5. So, yeah, we're looking forward to all of the teachers getting back to work. There you go, Sonny. But, it's been a good break. And we've got a few visitors here. Welcome to Pakenham. We're so glad to have you here. We're glad you've chosen to worship with us. Before we get into the message, Barry just reminded me he forgot to include a message. Every week after the service, we're wanting our elders to hang around and be available to anybody who'd like to talk, anybody who'd like a prayer. So if you'd like to meet some of our elders, please hang around. They'll be around somewhere at the front after the church service. Also, just a reminder, there's a quick meeting for our children's ministry leaders happening next door after the service. So stick around for that. Okay, we've got slides. Yes. Oh, no, we don't have slides. Okay, we're working on it, but we'll see how we go. Just to refresh, for those of you who weren't here last week, Barry did a little quiz. What did Pastor Ryan talk about? I wanted to set the year up for all of you, wherever you are in life, whatever you're doing, work-wise, if you're studying. I really wanted you to start strong, and I wanted to use the calling of Joshua as a model for you to use as you go into the new year. And to quickly cover the main points, Joshua is one out of two people who make it to the promised land out of a whole generation of people who've gone through the Exodus, people who've all been through the waters of baptism. But the thing is, most of the people who leave Egypt make a decision to be what I call sandbox Christians. People who just want to live in the desert. They don't want to step up to the challenges of facing the giants that are coming in the promised land. And so many of us choose to be sandbox Christians. We don't want anything more. We just want to live a happy, content life. And somebody messaged me a question which I wanted to share with you. Like, Pastor Ryan, do sandbox Christians lose their salvation? Are they not going to go to heaven or something like that? And I said, well, here's the thing. You see, God chooses to journey with his people in the sand, right? For 40 years. Is his presence there? It's there. There's a pillar of cloud and there's a pillar of fire at night guiding them. He is with them. But just know this. When you choose to stay in the sandpit, life gets a little bit more agitated. And sometimes in the spirit of agitation, you're going to make some bad choices. And so there are people from Moses' own family who rebel against him and God. And we see spectacularly, they just don't make it. So friends, you can be saved and live in the sandpit and just coast through life, but know that it comes with its own unique challenges. Joshua is somebody who's willing to take a step into the unknown with God. And I wanted to continue by exploring God's invitation to him just as he's about to go and face giants. My calling happened many years ago to ministry, and I'm not saying that we all have a calling to ministry. Hello, brother. He's got a calling to ministry. It's happening, all right? We've got to pray for this brother. God's going to use him in a mighty way. I was called to ministry in 2007 in a really black and white way. I often don't like to share this story because I don't want people to think God will only call you the way he called me. I was at a youth event, and I'm going to move to the slide, but if it's not up, on my slide you'd see a picture of the place where I was called in this very spectacular way. I'd been wrestling with what I do with my career. I'd been studying engineering. I'd dabbled with law. Wasn't feeling peaceful. Wasn't feeling content. Things weren't great at home at that time. Mum and Dad's marriage was ending, and I'm asking God, what's going on? Where am I going? What's my purpose? And I've been praying about this for a long time, and there's this preacher. It's a youth event that's happening in South Bank of Melbourne. And this preacher's there, and he's winding up his sermon, and he's making his appeal. And I'm in the crowd. I'm sitting down, and I'm having this silent prayer with God. God, what do you want me to do? I've been feeling maybe ministry is this thing you want me to do. I'm just not sure. It's a big commitment. If I do this, this is really going to cut ties with my dad in a big way. Dad was Catholic and really had issues with Adventists. Anyway, I'm praying this prayer. This guy's at the front. He's preaching his heart out, and he gets to his appeal. And whilst I'm praying silently to God, this guy, he says, God is calling somebody here today to go to ministry. I'm feeling this with every fiber of my being. God wants somebody here today to go into full-time ministry. And I'm like, whoa, that was a bit strange. Okay, God. God, that was spectacular. Was that you? Was this just a figment of my imagination? I'm like questioning God. And I say to God, look, here's the thing. I've actually looked at going to Avondale because I feel like this is what you've wanted me to do. If this really is you, I've never been baptized. I made a commitment. Anybody remember Net 98 with, anybody? Any hands? Yeah? Mum dragged us to church every week to go to Net 98. Here, Dwight Nelson, if you don't know, ask me later. And at Net 98, I made a decision for baptism, but the pastor never followed up. This is like 10 years later, and I'm like, God, do you remember that? I've always felt like that was the day I chose to follow you. But to go to Avondale, I'd need to be baptized. Would you accept a shotgun baptism before I go to Avondale? Like, this is me praying. This guy's still preaching. Anyway, I start to tune back into what he's saying. And he's like, I'm also feeling a strong impression that God wants somebody here today to be baptized, like really soon. And I'm just like, oh God, like, not in a blasphemous way, but I'm like, oh God, like, what are you doing to me? And that was it. This is why I'm here. But friends, that was my calling, but there was no clarity as to what are you going to do? What is going to be the trajectory? What's going to happen? What do I want you to do? And so over the course of my life, I've really enjoyed reading and studying the parts of Scripture where God calls people. I love the Great Commission. It's a passage where we are all being invited to participate in God's kingdom work, right? Love it, love it. For the Adventist church, a very defining passage of Scripture is the three angels' message, yeah? We have in Scripture, Jeremiah, and he gets this spectacular call. I love studying these passages. But probably the one that shaped me quite profoundly is the call of Joshua. And that's why I wanted to share this passage with you today. What is God calling Joshua to do? Well, I think there's a lot from it that we can learn. And guys, I just want you to know, God doesn't call us to small things. He calls us to giant problems. That's the reality of God's calling. He doesn't call you to, like flip a pancake. Maybe if he's going to call you to flip a pancake, it's going to be on a massive scale to have a massive impact. I have a picture here. I wish you could see it. If I wish you could see it, because on my screen is a map of exactly where God had called Israel, what would be their promised land. And if you could look at what I'm seeing, use your imaginations. I know you guys are all good at geography. Basically, we're talking about when you read the Old Testament, Joshua, when you read the Pentateuch, all of the first 5 books, what God was calling Joshua and Israel to take over, what Joshua's calling is to take over a territory which extends from the River Nile all the way to the Euphrates River, which is like modern-day Iraq. He's talking about a space which goes from the Mediterranean Sea to basically where all of the Emirate states are today, if you know that's the geography. I mean, it's such a huge geographical area. God doesn't call us to small things. And in sort of inspiring you to accept God's calling, I want you to know that God has big plans for your life. But so often those plans are never realized. This plan would never fully be realized. I mean, for a brief moment, we can sort of demise that maybe under Solomon, the boundaries of Israel's kingdom extended in this area, but not fully to the extent that was being described. Friends, God has big callings for us, but the question is, do we realize those callings? Do we step into the calling that He has for us? And friends, so often these callings aren't just for one generation. They're for several generations to realize. Just to encourage all of us in the room today, one of the other things I mentioned is that when God really starts to use Joshua is a man in his 60s maybe, 70s, we're not 100% sure, but he's not a spring chicken. I want you to know, friends, it doesn't matter where you fit on the spectrum of life, God can use you wherever you find yourselves. Don't throw in the towel until God throws in the towel. Amen? Friend, God's got some big things He wants to do for us. So I want to break down the calling, and I don't know how much time I'm going to be able to do the full sermon. I might have to cut it. But I wanted to look at this calling because God says some pretty important things that are so easy to gloss over. In Joshua chapter 1, if you've got your Bibles, go to Joshua chapter 1. If you don't, I would have had it up on the screen, but Joshua chapter 1, verses 6 is where we're going to start. And here God's going to ask Joshua to be strong and courageous for 3 different reasons. As you accept God's calling, or if you accept God's calling to do the impossible, to do something crazy with your life, God gives 3 reasons as to why you need to be strong and courageous as you face this giant obstacle. So let's have a look. Joshua chapter 1, verses 6. The first challenge to be strong and courageous comes in this verse, and God says to Joshua, "Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them." Right. So this is the first challenge. Joshua, I've got a big task for you to do. Here's the first reason why I need you to be strong and courageous. And I want you to think of your lives through Joshua's life as we sort of explore this. And I'm going to break these into 3 P's, right? Just to hopefully they'll stick with you. But the first reason God wants Joshua to be strong and courageous is because Joshua is going to help people discover their purpose. God is going to use Joshua, and through Joshua's leadership. Remember, we talked about Joshua's passions last week, and he's a man who has no reason to have been training with a sword and to get good at warfare, but God used his passion. Well, God's going to use the unique abilities, remember the Ruach of Chokmah, the spirit of wisdom, on Joshua. What is the end goal? To allow other people to walk in a blessed life. Friends, a part of your calling on some very broad way, God is wanting to use you. He's wanting to use me. He's wanting to use Pakenham Church. If you're a teacher, if you're a student, He wants you to be a blessing to others so their lives will be blessed. Does that make sense? And friends, sometimes we think about our calling as an Adventist church, we just have to proclaim. To what end? Well, friends, do you know when we start to proclaim the truth of Jesus, people's lives will get better? Do you believe that? I mean, that's a powerful motivating factor. To know that when you're being called, God can do something powerful in another person's life. I have another slide. There's a podcast, 2 podcasts I'm going to mention today that I listen to from time to time. And the first one, it's by a group called Lakeside Blvd. It's Jewish, okay? Lakeside Blvd. Everybody want to say Lakayim? Lakayim, right there in the back of the throat. It's a podcast by a group called Lakeside Blvd, and the podcast is called Kosher Money. I stumbled across this and I'm like, oh, I'm fascinated. And if you were to see my screen, there's a guy with his little Jewish yarmulke, and he's here to talk about Jewish money. And I remember I listened to the very first episode. He goes, you would never go to a Jewish person and ask them how to get to the NBA. But you would go to a Jewish person to ask them, how do I get good at money? And he goes, we are very upfront. And in this podcast, we want to talk to you what we've learned about money. And a lot of what we've learned about money comes through the scriptures. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm on for this ride. I'm interested. Now, there's a lot. They invite rabbis on and all sorts of Jewish people who excel in business and all sorts. And time again, what I've heard come through, this is sort of me reading between the lines, and sometimes they're very explicit about this. The reason why so many Jews are good with money or good at making money is that we've learned in order to make money, we need to help people discover the lives that God's called them to. We need to bless other people's lives. Now, friends, this is not a sermon about getting wealthy today, but what they've realized is if we can help add value to somebody's life, more often than not, somebody's willing to pay for that privilege, right? Now, here's the thing. God is calling all of us to bless other people's lives. They don't have the full picture. Don't we have a fuller picture of what's going on? I mean, just please don't hear me saying this is the path to wealth and prosperity. No, what I am trying to say is God is wanting us to help other people live more fulfilled lives. I mentioned to you guys last year, we met some of the counselors from this area, and one of the big challenges that is being faced in this community, the people walking around this lake, there is so many people who are facing mortgage stress right now. At the Adventist, we are seeing more and more and more people coming because they don't have enough. What if living a biblical life could help them experience some level of blessing? Now, this leads us to the second challenge of being strong and courageous that God has. It's in verse 7. So the first invitation is help people find their purpose, the land, the place God had promised them. But in verse 7, we get the next invitation to be strong and courageous. Only be strong and very courageous. This is the only time God says be very courageous. The first time, no very. The second time, no very. This one, he says be very strong and courageous. God, why do we need to be very strong and courageous? Here's why. Being careful to do according to all the law that Moses, my servant, commanded you. It's not, be very strong and courageous. Why? Not because you're going to face giants, not because there's going to be lots of wars, not because there's going to be lots of conflicts. Be very strong and courageous, friends, to stick to God's word. God thought this was the thing that they would struggle with the most. Please don't turn from this law to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. Wow. Verse 8, this book of law shall not depart from your mouth, but you will meditate. You're going to think on this. You're going to chew on it. You're going to really process this day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. And here's the thing. For then you will make your way prosperous. We don't like this word in Adventism. And then you'll have good success. The second time God mentions good success. God is inviting Joshua. Joshua, the reason why you are here, and so many people aren't, you have stuck with my word. I gave a whole lot of laws on how the nation's going to be this incredible people. They're going to be incredible witness if they follow my word. I need you to keep on walking that path. That's what I really need you to do. And friends, Joshua will do that. And when you get to the next book, Judges, it's really sad because what you see is when Joshua and his generation die, everybody else, the wheels fall off the wagon. Friends, every generation needs to make a commitment that they are going to walk in God's ways. I'm going to follow God's path. My mum is here. She taught me to love God's word. Now my task is to pass the mantle on to the next generation, to my children, for them to have a love of Scripture, for them to have a love of walking that walk. And God promises when you do this, there is good success, there is prosperity. How many of us equate the good life with just following God's word? The other podcast that I listen to, great podcast, I often listen to it when I'm driving from here to my wife's home in Bairnsdale. It's a longer podcast, and it's called How I Built This. It's an American podcast, but in this podcast, this Guy Raz is his name, Guy Raz. He interviews the people who have started some of the biggest companies that you and I know of, the companies that are on the tips of our tongue. For instance, Instagram. He interviewed the founder of Instagram, okay? The guy who started Airbnb, okay? The person, for those of you who like to buy interesting things online, the people who started Etsy, okay? Anybody eat Chobani yogurt? You go to the supermarket, talks about to this guy. Guy is an immigrant from like Armenia or something like that. Talks to the people who made TripAdvisor. If you're ever traveling and you want to know, what do I do when I go to Sydney? TripAdvisor shows up in Google. Guy who started Goodreads, if you like to read. The guy who founded Dyson Vacuums. If you like the great outdoors and you wear outdoor clothing, Patagonia. They talk to every single person, and I really love it. Learn so much of people's journeys, the challenges, facing kind of what Joshua has, these Herculean tasks. But at the end of every single episode, Guy Raz asks this question: how much would you attribute your success to hard work or B, luck? And it's really interesting because literally, I'd say most of the people who are on this podcast, the people who founded these giant companies, they were like, yeah, we were kind of in the right place at the right time. Yeah, we worked hard, but there is this sort of thing about luck. And there was a high level of luck. Now, as a Christian, when I originally was hearing this, I used to squirm. I'm like, I don't know. Like, is it luck? Like, I'm not into luck. Like, I've got Chinese heritage, and they're all about luck there. But yeah, I don't know. But I did my research into luck, like creating opportunities, spaces where things can flourish, right? God here is promising good success and prosperity. But I read this book by this guy called Dr. James Austin, and he's a neurologist. And he's done a lot of study into luck. And he says there are 4 types of luck. The first type of luck is what we call blind luck. I mean, a lot of us are immigrants. We were born where we were born. That's blind luck. We couldn't make the choice, okay? Prince William, it was blind luck that he was born the child of the future king, right? He can't choose where he was born. We can't choose. So these are your circumstances. You cannot change them. It's the family you grew up in. It's the church you went to. It's the schooling, education, the friends, all of it. The second type of luck that he says comes, he calls it motion, okay? And he says as you get older, the energy you exert in the world creates opportunity. And some people might call this hustle culture. You know, like I work hard, I build networks, and I'm trying to forge my way through life through hard work, and more opportunities come through life that way. So he calls this motion. You got blind luck, luck attributed to motion. The third one is a luck based on awareness. And he says, you know, this is a person who has a little bit more of a higher understanding in a given area. The best example is think of an entrepreneur or an investment banker, okay, somebody who invests in the stock markets. We all have the ability to buy shares, right, and get rich like Warren Buffett, but how many of us know what Warren Buffett knows, right? I mean, maybe if we all knew what Warren Buffett did and we put our money in the same place, we would be exploiting the opportunities that are there. So he says, for all of us, we can go through this. But then there is this fourth type of luck, and he calls this uniqueness. And this, my ears pricked up when I read about this. He says, this kind of luck comes to you unsought. This is not somebody looking for opportunities. It comes to you unsought because of who you are and how you behave. There is a type of luck, he uses this word in a very scientific way, but he says there is a sort of opportunity that comes to people just based on who they are, the values they have, the principles that they live by, the North Stars of their life. These can create opportunities. And I remember reading this and I'm like, man, God's inviting me to be so wholly consumed by his word. Is this kind of equivalent to what we're talking about, a unique calling? I mean, doesn't God call Israel to be a unique people? Right? And how are they going to be unique? Well, they're going to apply his word in their lives. It's going to change who they are. They are not going to be like anybody else in the world. And that's going to create opportunities, prosperity, good success, God says. We are not people who believe in the forces of blind luck, friends. We are people who place our trust in God's word. And God is telling us, when you live your life by his word, man, opportunities will come. But again, how many of us are just being sandbox Christians? We're not taking God all the way. We're not living by his word. We're not living by his promises. We're kind of coasting along, and we show up in this place on Sabbath only to go back into the muck and grime of life, not applying any principles that we are learning. Friends, maybe this is the year, as a part of God's calling, that you become someone who lives by God's word. If you want to start, here's a little practical tip. Start reading the book of Proverbs. If you want to be somebody who lives by God's will, Proverbs literally says a foolish person does this and a wise person does that. Just start there and see what opportunities open up to you. David, who I'm going to be baptizing, Barry just shared a little about him. I remember him as like a 10-year-old at Dandenong Polish. And between meeting him last year and then he's not been in church, he's done his own thing. But last year he was like, Ryan, I've watched my brother live a life of regret, and I don't want that. So I've decided I want to really live by God's word. This literally, David, this young kid, he's a cool kid. He could have gone and played soccer in Europe, but he's chosen to walk a path and just follow God. And I'm already seeing the fruits from this young man making these choices. Friends, it's never too late to start living by God's word. Psalm 19 verse 10 says that the words of God are more precious than gold. They're sweeter than honey. The words of the Lord are perfect, reminding the soul. Don't ask me why. I'll probably share this one day. I have a stack of gold. I literally have a stack of gold. And whenever I read this verse, I'm like, I've bought this gold ages ago and it's grown in value, over the years. I'm not one of those guys who buys gold because the economy is going to tank and there's going to be this and that. It might, and I have gold, cool. That's not why I bought the gold. But I've watched the gold every year just appreciate in value. In the last few years, it's been crazy. And here God is telling me, Ryan, do you believe that if you were to live by my words, that it has a greater value on your life than the pile of gold you have? We should have bought some gold. It would have been good. I should have done that. Friends, do you believe that? I mean, when you really think about it, do you place more weight on God's word than the things that you are currently looking to bring you wealth and prosperity? I really want us to think about these questions. So that's the second, be strong and courageous, okay? God is wanting to help us, help people find their purpose, but he's also wanting to prosper us. So now we get to the third P. Okay, verse 9. In verse 9, we read, have I not commanded you? Here God's asking a question. Haven't I already said this twice? Haven't I already commanded you? And then what's the next thing after the question? Be strong and courageous. God's like, I've already said this twice. Now, don't be frightened. Do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Man, imagine being Joshua. You've got like 1 million people or so to lead. Is that overwhelming? I mean, it's overwhelming leading 4 people, like 3 kids and a wife. That's overwhelming. Let's acknowledge that, right? Being a principal is overwhelming. Being a teacher of like 20-something kids is overwhelming. Leading 1 million people, okay, like wow, that's pretty big. But God says, don't be frightened of the thing that I'm calling you to do. Don't be dismayed. And if I can use another letter P to summarize this, God is saying, have you thought about your posture? This is something I've struggled with as a minister. I look at so many ministers out there, so many of my colleagues, they're kicking goals, they're doing amazing things. And my tendency is kind of just sort of shy away a little bit. Okay, you're not as good as these guys, Ryan. You're not as good. You're not as capable. Maybe that's a thought that the enemy's throwing my way. How many of us have those thoughts? We just have that imposter syndrome as we go through life. You know, like, oh man, I've been called to be a pastor of this church. Like, if they only knew. Like, and you're like, man, can I really do this job? But God says, I am inviting you to I want you guys to do this right now. Close your eyes. Close your eyes, please, if this is okay. I'm not going to get into anything weird. Just close your eyes. And just roll your shoulders back. How many of you had shoulders that needed rolling back? So many of us just go through life with a stoop. And it says so much. We just feel less than. I'm not as good as this person. I'm not as that's like, every now and then I have to remind myself, well, stretch it out. Whew. God's inviting me to roll my shoulders back as I go through life. Just remember that. He's inviting you to take a stronger posture in this giant, whatever he's calling you to. God is inviting us to have a strong posture. Be strong and courageous. Don't be frightened. Don't be dismayed. For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. There's a story of a girl. You might remember her story. It was in the news briefly, but I found it very interesting. It's a story about a Muslim girl who lived in Pakistan in a place called the Swat Valley, I'm not sure. Her name was Malala Yousafzai. Anybody remember her? Malala is this very interesting girl. She's born in this part of Pakistan and it's under Taliban control. Her father has done a very dangerous thing for a large part of his life. And the dangerous thing is to advocate for the rights of girls to be educated. That was the calling of Malala's father. And Malala, as a young girl, firmly believes in this cause. And so Malala becomes an advocate within her own right as a young teenager. And this is in spite of the fact that her family are constantly receiving death threats. Right? There's always these death threats. There's always like, watch out, you know, there's often plots on their life and things are scary. And in 2013, at the age of 15 years old, Malala will be shot in the head for this cause that she believes in. Now, miraculously, she survives this attempted assassination plot. And I want you to think what you would do if you were young, 15-year-old Malala and her family. I mean, I'm a father. I love Macy to bits. If she was shot in the head, I mean, I'd just be like, I'm so proud of what you've done, but I think it's time we stop. That's the coward's way, but that's how I would feel 100%. I'd be like, oh, Macy, I know you really believe in the rights of girls to be educated, but it was too much watching you almost die. I just don't think I could go through that again. I don't know if I want you to do that. But that's not Malala. Malala's like, all right, I'm good. Got a scar, that's interesting. No one's going to see it. My head's covered. I'm going to get back out there and I'm going to keep advocating for the rights of girls to be educated. I mean, doesn't that take some bravery? What does that tell you about her posture going through life? It's like, I don't even care. I'm not afraid of dying. Friends, God's inviting all of us. I think He places a calling on all of our lives. He wants us to be a blessing to others. He wants us to help people find their purpose in lives. He wants all of us to prosper as we follow the calling, as hard as it may be. But He wants us to go through with a strong posture. Friends, maybe 2024 is the year you lift your head up. You roll your shoulders back, not in your own strength, but in the strength of Jesus. Yeah? If there's a critique I have of Adventists, I feel so many of us, we believe in Jesus, but we don't walk through life with this bold confidence. Every now and then I'll meet a fellow Christian of another denomination, and it's just always interesting to see some, it's usually the charismatic ones. Have you noticed this? We have so much to critique about charismatic Christians, but man, are they confident. So I told you last week was this super hectic weekend. I'm conducting this wedding, and I meet this girl at this wedding, and she's just so out there as a Christian. We were talking, it was just, I didn't know her before, I didn't know the other people talking to, but she's like, yeah, I'm a Christian, and I'm studying to be a pastor this year. And I'm like, oh, wow, like, she's just very, for me, it's a coy topic. I'm like, let me get to know you, let me scaffold. Yeah, what do you do? Like, well, I'm a pastor, and I like to get there. She was just, no, I am this, I go to this church, and I'm this. And I was watching her, and I was watching people interact with her, and they're like, oh, really? And guys, there was something about her confidence which just made the conversation so matter-of-fact. I mean, so many of us, we're just sort of coy and kind of cautious about what we say, and it puts everybody else on like, oh, he doesn't really like what he's doing. He doesn't really believe in what he's all about. How many of us need to change our posture? Simple sermon. Simple challenges. But friends, like I said, few people get out of the sandpit. Few people get out of the sandbox. I would love this church to be a church that gets out of the sandbox. I'd love to hear stories. When I've left this church and I check in with Shenando or Barry or Anna, I'm like, hey, how's things going? And I'm like, man, our church is kicking goals. People, they're walking in their purpose. People are coming to our community. They're experiencing blessings. Their lives are being changed. That's what I want for this church. I'm going to invite our music team to sing our final hymn. And our final hymn is Standing on the Promises. Do we have some promises God's making to us? An invitation to take the challenge? I think we do. Let's accept the challenges God is putting before us in 2024. Amen.